So we are kicking off on YouTube. It's fully up and running. I can see quite a few people waiting in that room. So, Michael, if you are ready, we can definitely get started. I'll do
Ready, David?
awesome. So, quick introductions. Of course, I am David Ashton, David Jones, however you would like to call me, the community manager here at Sweat. You've most likely seen me in the channels talking away all day, every day. But that is who I am. A nice, simple introduction. And we are joined by Michael, if you'd like to give a quick rundown of what you do here at Sweat Economy.
Yeah, thanks, David. So my name's Michael, and I have relatively recently joined the Sweat Economy team, working specifically on Sweat Wallet, and with a focus on a lot of the crypto features, of which voting was one of the first things that I've worked on, and hopefully much more to come in the coming months. So very exciting project.
Awesome. And of course, you led the Burn Vote project in the last couple of weeks. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the first in-app voting that we've done. And keen to discuss some of those results and tackle some of the questions today that I'm sure a lot of the users have. I've been watching some of the pre-AMA questions as well, and some really, really good questions coming up. So excited for that.
awesome. Yep, so we have 30 people in the Discord right now, just waiting for Discord to send out the notification. They like to delay it, but we do have quite a few people on our YouTube listening in. Michael, how are you doing? Coming from YouTube. Hello, David. Distribute, distribute, distribute. I can assure you it's coming soon. Michael does have a very cool update for us. So, we can kick off. I'd like to ask Michael a very random question. I always like to ask random questions at the start to introduce each other, and I'll kick off. So, outside of work, how do you relax, Michael? How do you spend your days?
Obviously, walk, David. But to be more specific, I like walking, preferably around mountains and rivers, in the form of hiking. Um, and I generally just enjoy a bunch of outdoor activities, everything from rowing to playing football, cricket, squash, fishing, the like. So quite a sport fanatic.
So a very healthy, active lifestyle. I can say you're doing a million times better than me already. So proud of you. I'm trying to set myself a goal of 8,000 steps per day. It's quite a low goal for some people, but I definitely feel the burn at that point. So that's my targets.
Well, I mean that's still impressive for working remotely, I guess, because you really have to leave the house to hit that goal.
Yeah, there's positives and negatives for working remotely. One of them is that, of course, I do have a bit more freedom with when I can just up and leave, so I like it. Cool. So let's kick off into the vote. Of course, it's the biggest topic right now. So, one question to you. Were the results as you expected? How did it go?
So that's a that's a good question, David. I don't know this community too well. I'm sure I'll get to know them a lot more in the coming weeks and months. Um, I think it did go as expected. Um, People that are pro burn may be surprised by that response, but I think that the average person is not going to look at the underlying effect on tokenomics when making a decision, like burn or distribute. And those that do would obviously be pro burn. The average person with a limited understanding of tokenomics, if I can use that word, would do the logical thing and cast the vote where they can benefit the most directly in the short term, which would have been to distribute. Um, and although both those votes are good in different ways, directly or indirectly, on the economy itself, obviously burning has got a more sort of long-term effect than the shorter-term effect where an individual person gains by distributing. And not knowing this community very well, but guessing that a lot of the users are more comfortable from the Web 2 side of things, that's the way you can expect a vote to go, as opposed to this being a purist Web 3 community.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. One thing to focus on there is we have come from Sweatcoin, which is primarily Web 2, of course, so a lot of our user base is from there. One thing that we did do in the weeks leading up to the vote was launch a What is Burning lesson in the Sweat Wallet app. I think this should have been launched a little bit earlier to give people more time to actually run through it and do the quiz, but I definitely think it did help educate our users so they can make a more informed decision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think going forward, I mean, we're going to see a lot more voting coming, just so that everyone knows. And the way we want to do voting as well is I think a lot of people didn't entirely read through the entire proposal in the form of a Medium blog. And what we'd want to do in the future is almost have like a pre-vote sprint where we can float the proposal with enough time by the community, maybe have a pre-vote AMA, and then only proceed into voting, so that there's a lot of clarity and opportunity for the community to not just inform themselves, but have a very good picture of where funds have come from, where they're going, what does this mean for me, what does this mean for the economy in general, and have education in the form of discussion as opposed to just the learn to earn.
That could be really, really interesting, where there's sort of multiple layers and a lot of opportunity for the community to be really involved in the entire process. That would be really cool, and I'm very excited to explore that more, especially with the community feedback, of course.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I'm just pinging on Telegram and Discord here to let people know that we are live. And we can go into the next question. Of course, you built your first feature within the Sweat Wallet app. So could you talk us through the actual process of building the feature? How long it took? Was it easier than expected? Any of the nuances there?
Yeah, I think the desire to build this in-app was really sort of an experiment initially, just to start getting comfortable with the habit of voting, and having all the questions that have arisen arise, um, and also to get a feel of how the community engages with voting and have a look at voting turnout and that sort of thing. As I alluded to in the previous conversation we just had about the process of voting, for those that have voted in other DAOs and other proposals, you will know that generally the process is significantly different, in the sense that voting usually goes through a series of steps, and discussion boards and forums, and oftentimes there's a committee that passes on a minimum check, a temperature check before the proposal is actually drafted. In our case, it was very experimental in the sense that it was built very quickly. I think the whole flow and the whole idea and everything was put together in a matter of weeks. And when you're putting a flow like that into an existing app with a lot of usage, there are a lot of hurdles to try to get by. The other thing that was an interesting learning for me, without really understanding too much of the user base, was how language and complexity of the vote itself will be received. I am a native English speaking person, so the initial vote, because I'm sure we're going to talk about the revote, the initial vote made a lot of sense to me. Obviously, because I I wrote a lot of it, but it also made sense to kind of like peer review and people that saw it before it was launched. But after looking at a lot of the comments, and looking at how that vote and the language and the options was perceived by a lot of the community, I realized voting should be kept super simple unless it is a much smaller set of individuals, like a committee that's casting a vote, that's giving a lot of careful thought and research into that vote before making it. So there were a lot of sort of personas to try to cater for, and being relatively blind on the kind of people that are going to end up voting and interacting with the feature. But I think we've got a lot of good feedback and homework for the way the next vote is going to look in app.
Yeah, that's awesome. We've had a lot of feedback and it's definitely being used for building out the next process. And of course through the community and all of the feedback that we received here. And like you said, we did do a revote, which we actually polled on, and there were multiple layers there. To some community members' sort of dismay and to some's love, which was a bit of a cool experience just to see the split there. Um, Obviously, we done the revote, and I believe within 24 to 48 hours, we'd actually been able to relaunch. Could you give a quick bit of insight as to actually building the brand new or the new layout towards the simplified vote? How did we take the feedback and expand upon it?
Yeah, there were a couple of really simple decisions and a couple of more thoughtful decisions that went into the Revote UI. The one was the placement of language. So people had been learning a lot about the word burn in the burning learn to earn. There was a vote that was done last year, which also went about burning. So the flavor of the week was burn, burn, burn. And when we had launched the initial UI, it was framed in the way that we are going to burn unless we distribute. What is your vote for how much should rather be distributed and not burned? And I think, given the history on burning, the when the vote appeared for most people that were active in the community, without reading too much about it, the sort of logical thing that people may have thought is, hey, whatever I select here is definitely going to be in favor of burning. It's not going to be in favor of what should not be burnt and distributed. So we did away. So that was the first thing, and the second thing was just the maybe in hindsight complicated mathematics of how the end result will be calculated of a combination of percentages that are proportionately calculated post vote. And that is having multiple options of splits 25, 75, 50, 50, 75, 25, and 0, 100, and 100, 0. Surprisingly, there were less questions about growth jars and who gets the tokens. I think there are still a couple that we can tackle today. But we did away with all of that, David. In the end, it was much simpler to say, do we burn or do we distribute? And it was a simple yes or no, and we try to also enlarge the pictures of a flame and of something that represents distributing. And maybe the only thing that was still vague to some people was, is this a all or nothing vote? And it wasn't. It wasn't a majority rules vote where if we have a more than 50%, we reach quorum and then we burn everything, we burn nothing. It was still your vote is a contribution to the split that's going to take place. We tried to make that clear on the very first card on the home screen by saying, I can't remember exactly what it said. It was something like, well, let me get my app open here. Help us decide how to split 100 million. And we hope that that would imply that it's not going to be a Boolean outcome, a 0 or a 1, or all or nothing. It's always going to be a proportion of burning and splitting. But I think doing away with the 5 options was definitely a better decision, and one we'll try to keep when we have a large number of people, like over 100,000 votes coming in for future votes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think one of the key points there was simplifying, making it easier to use, and being proportional. So it was a collective outcome, and every single vote did actually matter rather than being a majority. That was really, really cool to see in our app. I loved that personally. And based off of that, do you have the results for us so we know exactly how much was burned or distributed?
Yeah, let me get them up here for us with the final outcome. Yeah, I probably should have opened the the final outcome just before the call. I'm just quickly getting it
All
here.
good. I can say we've actually already done the burn, which is on chain, and you can see it linked in the chat very, very soon. And we will be having a sort of blog post to round up all of the event for you guys soon.
Yeah, so the total amount, I'll read out a couple of stats here just for the benefit of everyone. In the end, we had 153,783 votes. The last vote came in at 2 minutes to midnight UTC on the 25th. So there were no votes that came in the final 120 seconds. Um, we had 91,481 votes in favor of distributing and 62,302 votes in favor of burning. So it's a 59 point, let's say 49% in favor of distribute, and then the remaining 40 point, call it 51% in favor of burning. And that translated to that multiplied by 100 million. But let me give the final answer, because remember, just to clarify, there were a lot of questions about, well, what's happening with the amount of sweat in the first vote. And if you recall, we charged a fee of 1 sweat in the first vote. We had 91,441 votes in the first vote, amounting to as much sweat. We simply added that to the 100 million pool. And so the total amount that were divided by the, I'm going to simplify it and say that 60-40 ratio, was finally 100 million and 91,441 sweat. And that's how it got distributed. So about 59.5 million sweat will be distributed to users with 12 months growth jars at the time of closing, and about 40.5 million tokens were burnt. And David, I had another screen open here to get those numbers. I don't know if we have shared the hash for that burn, but yeah, we could publicize that. And I don't know if I should chat about the distribution and when, or if that's a question for later.
Absolutely. If you're ready to start on it now, we can talk about the distribution process and, of course, when people can expect to see the jazz in their app.
Sure. Let's tackle the latter question first, because everyone's dying to know. By today, everyone. So I'll take liberty with that and say by by midnight today, just because running a script and calculation of that size with so many users can take quite long to roll out. But we have all the numbers. We've grabbed all the analysis for growth jars opened at the close of voting and taken that snapshot. And it will be that snapshot that we apply the distribution number to. So that 59.5 odd million. And so we'll I think actually, in fact, straight after this AMA, I'm hopping on a call internally to start rolling out the creation and distribution for that amount to users with jars.
Awesome. So,
And maybe just a note on that. Sorry, I
yeah,
did see a really good question from someone in the pre-AMA. Will, for transparency's sake, will that amount be transferred to, what was it, deposit.fees.sweat or something like that? Let's just get the exact.
deposits.grow.sweat.
Yes, the answer is absolutely it will. For those that are a little bit ahead, you will notice that that exact balance is actually still sitting in community.sweat. 59.5 million. The rest has already been burnt. So that transfer from community.sweat to the deposit account will take place in parallel with the tokens being moved, with the distribution rolling out.
Awesome. So, hopefully by midnight tonight, everyone will see the jazz in their app, as well as all of the tokens being transferred to the deposits.grow.sweat wallet address. So that's awesome to know. I'll take 2 minutes here just to talk about the quick upcoming features in the Sweat Wallet app. Of course, a lot of questions going on right now about Sweat Hero as well as the swap/trade feature. So I'll give a quick rundown for you guys. And of course, anyone listening in, this is sort of early information in a way. So congratulations for listening in. But of course, there will be announcements soon. For the trade screen, for the swap feature that you guys see in the Sweat Wallet app, we will be testing this throughout May, and we're hoping to release the feature at the end of May. There will be different test groups, and we will be very much requesting that you guys come and give your feedback to us in the feedback channels on Discord, of course, and in any of our platforms. So expect a few groups of users to start testing the trade feature and have access there. And please do come and let us know your thoughts and feedback on it. Next up is, of course, the Sweat Hero timeline. So, as you know, we are currently running the closed beta where we do challenges and events for people to win access there and play the game early. So, we're hoping to release the Friends Battle feature very, very soon, hopefully within the next week. And then a couple of weeks after that, we'll open up the sort of economy aspect. By that, I mean you will actually be able to wager your sweat in a battle and then win or lose against your friends in a friends battle. So that will be really, really cool. We're still aiming to release the game in Q2, though we cannot give an exact date just yet. But don't worry, a lot more news will be coming, as well as some more teasers, graphics, animations, all of that really cool stuff being posted in Discord for you guys to see. So keep an eye out in the next sort of month, and we'll have a lot more news for you guys. Awesome. So with that very quick update said, and please, if you do have questions, don't be afraid to post it in the chat. We can jump into some sort of text questions. So as Michael said, there were some questions posted in the channel beforehand, and I can see a lot of questions being posted live on YouTube as well as in our Discord. So, Michael, I'll read out just a couple of questions quickly, and then we can bring some people on stage to ask something live. Let me go and find. So, a sort of question about the tokenomics, supply and demand in general. From Starseed, it's a two-pronged question. Does burning work to increase value when there is an unlimited token supply? And for distribution purposes, does it matter if your growth jar is in a 3, 6, or 12-month jar? So I can tackle the first one a little bit if you'd like to expand on whatever I say, and then we'll cover the quick distribution question. So in terms of token supply, we have got a very sort of dynamic and complex model here, where of course there's the minting difficulty curve, which increases over time. We're already at around 3.6 difficulty, 3.6 times difficulty than launch, which is really, really great. And we have numerous different models to support in supply. So while technically it's unlimited and there will be a lot of people earning sweat over time, we will continually be buying back sweat using our revenues and profit, of course, as well as building out token sink features, which means that it directly burns the supply rather than coming into treasuries. And then finally, we will, of course, have sweat hero, revenue, and burn votes to continue on all of these aspects. So an increasing minting difficulty, token sinks, and revenue buybacks, and any future features planned will definitely support in this sort of matter to decrease supply, or anti-inflationary at least. Michael, if there's anything you'd like to add there, or if you'd like to jump into the distribution question about the growth jar sort of periods.
Yeah, maybe just for those of the community that are on this call and that are sort of confused by words like supply and tokenomics and deflation and inflation and all these tokenomics related terms, a simple way to understand burn is like for us particularly who have an unlimited supply but with the deflationary curve, it's like saying we have a cup of water and the water, the cup has holes in the bottom, just a few small holes, so the water's permanently running out, but it's also a little jug on top filling it out at ideally the same rate. The glass is never going to get empty because there's always water coming in for all eternity. But when we burn, it's like we just take a sip of water out of that cup. And so the remaining of the water in the cup is going to be slightly more concentrated, right? Because there's less in. Assuming there was concentrate. Maybe my metaphors, I'm butchering my own metaphor here, but I hope that makes sense. So obviously, when we burn, and for those of you that are curious for future burns, every time we burn, it's going to get significantly more difficult to recover the amount that was burned because the jar that we're pouring water in is getting that little faucet that's filling up the cup is getting smaller and smaller, as in metaphorical for the deflationary nature of our minting of our curve. And so, yes, of course, by that definition, every time we burn, it does add value, even if it's not that tangible to whatever is left in our supply, the water that's left in the cup.
That is a really brilliant metaphor, and I think I'm going to steal that moving forward.
Well, I'm seeing you use coffee in your metaphor, not water, 100%. Then we could get creative with the milk and everything else there. But sure. Okay, good one.
Awesome. Yeah, so that was a really
Oh,
good
and then
question.
sorry. And then the second question is, I think it was for this particular vote, whiskey. For this particular vote, would it have an impact if you had a 3 or 6 month or so jar? Yes, it would. Um, and I'm sorry if you weren't aware that the distribution only applies to users with 12-month jars. But in this particular vote, we will only be looking at the balances held by users with 12-month jars to calculate the proportion of how we divide up that 59 and a half, sorry, yeah, 59.5 million tokens. So if you had a 3 or 6 month jar, it wouldn't, you wouldn't be participating in the distribution, unfortunately.
Cool. Thank you for the answer. There's a quick question here. Where can we find the total sweat already minted? Anyone know the total amount until now? You can view the current circulating supply as well as total supply on either CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko or any other sort of aggregator website there. I don't believe I have exact numbers right now, but these websites are pretty much live. They are updated very regularly for you to be able to track that yourselves. And by the way, every sweat in existence has been minted by physical activity in some way. More questions. How much will we win or burn? The percentage was roughly 60-40. We've already burnt the percentage there, and we're in the process of distributing, hopefully finished by midnight, as Michael said earlier. Um, One slightly trickier question, not so much about the burn vote, is will the sweat allocated in the US release match your current sweat coin holdings, including the sweat coin you earned from Premium? So this has kind of been outlined in the blog post that covered the US launch. It will not be a one-to-one matching, or it's most likely not going to be, because it would be unfair that users who signed up to Sweat a year ago would have had less Sweat minted due to the minting difficulty. So there's going to be some sort of arrangement there. We will have a lot more information for you in the coming months in the form of blog posts and, of course, AMAs with the core team. Now, there's a bit of a technical question from Safala, which, if you can read it out, Michael, or if you'd like me to read it, absolutely fine. It is in AMA questions. How to distribute a jar and the sort of self-custody aspect. So how will the jars work? Is it a contract? Are we just doing it in the deposits wallet address? This is a bit of a difficult, complicated question here.
Yep, that's a great. I'm not sure who asked that. That's a very good question. I'll just say this: we are moving towards fully decentralized voting mechanism in the back end. In other words, a smart contract handles all the vote interpretation. For this particular vote, we are using an account where all the votes went, and we patch the voting option as metadata to each transaction, and then we can just query that account. And I think that's just a sort of a preamble. I think the question was more around, I mean, if these are self-custody accounts, how can we create and distribute that sweat on behalf of a user? We will not. That's the short answer. What we're going to do is create jars. If I can put it like this, in an off-chain fashion, in the sense that your jar and your balance will reflect in your app by tonight, or when let's say when you wake up tomorrow morning and you refresh the app, those who qualified will see their sweat. The lockup will still work with the lockup contract that we have, and the amount will sit in that deposits account, as the question that was asked earlier. And then we will do a token transfer to the account after 12 months when the tokens plus the interest gets released, the principal plus interest 12 months from now. So that operates, I'm sure the person who asked this would have a bit of knowledge around how our traditional smart contracts work. That is slightly different from a contract releasing it. It will still be an interaction where all the funds are released by manually by a script in the form of a transaction to the user's account 12 months from now. But all the sweat will sit in a single pooled account for the next 12 months.
Yep, as
Hope that
usual, they
answers the
go
question.
into the dedicated address to hold the growth jar deposits, and we're
Yeah.
building out a fully sort of decentralized self-custody aspect there. I'm not too knowledgeable on that myself, but you did give a pretty good explanation. I'm seeing some questions on YouTube as well as in our chat. I appreciate we're at 30 minutes now, so if you have to run, you have to run, but I'll be staying alongside for a few more questions. Would you like to actually pull up just one or two people for a quick text, a quick voice question? I think we'll pull someone up. So, for those in Discord, of course, if you press the raise hand to speak button, then we are happy to bring you on stage to ask any questions live. If you're not comfortable, then just send your questions in the chat channel, of course. We don't have any existing requests. I think we have a shy audience today, which is absolutely fine. Positive long-term effects, of course. I'll read out a question from YouTube. Could you please release a video explaining the project and how individuals will ultimately benefit by participating? That's a pretty good idea. We're definitely looking to sort of build out a learning bank of videos for people to easily understand, as well as personally translating a lot of our content moving forward so that anyone who does not speak English primarily will still be able to understand everything. We will need a strong marketing campaign in the US to achieve greater adoption. I do agree. We already have a lot of US users of Sweatcoin, the Web2 app. I think that's definitely going to give us a brilliant launchpad, and we will, of course, do some strong marketing activity over in the US to capture a lot of users, which means more users, more people walking, everyone's healthier, and a lot more people actually using the features. And a lot of our features either generate revenue or burn sweat directly. One of the interesting things would be the Sweat Hero game, where the sort of potential sink for the supply there is really, really high. I'm very excited for people to see a lot more information. I'm going to assume that Michael's actually had to run over to some calls maybe or start this distribution process. So you guys may see your jars showing up in the app very soon.
David, I'm can still hang around if there's a couple more specific questions that I can field.
Sure. I'm just looking in the channels. There's a lot of questions right
There's
now about US
there's
launch.
there's maybe one just to wrap up on the burn, and I've seen this in the pre-AMA questions as well. What will the effect be of burn, like tangibly? And someone here is saying that it doesn't look like the price has gone up, and there was a burn. You guys must remember that 40 million, although it's a lot to anyone individually, is not a lot in terms of the total circulating supply. So simply put, it would more be like a blip on the radar. If the amount that was burnt was a lot larger, then we would potentially start seeing some effects on the market. But it needs to be a significant proportion of the circulating supply to see that effect. You would see far more effect from a sell-off on an exchange, for instance, than what you would on burning 40 million.
Yep, and with that said, there's a lot more sort of burns and burn votes to come, so please do keep your eyes on our announcements. I think that's pretty much all for the burn questions and answers here. There's a lot of questions about the US launch and anything like that, which is really interesting, and we will have a lot more articles to cover them better than what I can give you right now. What is the circulating supply as for now? around 4.6 billion. This can be verified through CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko. When will Sweat Hero come out? Still aimed for Q2, but I cannot give direct dates just yet. Are you planning on recruiting translators for the Sweat Wallet app? Possibly. We are a very, very wide range team with people from all corners of the world. So we have a lot of languages spoken in-house already, not not including as well the moderation team, who all of which are multilingual in some aspect. So I think we've got a lot of languages covered, but perhaps we will see this for some languages that we don't. When will the swap option be available? We're testing it during May for certain groups, and we will be hoping to release it at the end of May. Cool. Well, we're getting a lot of sort of repeat questions here, which are being answered in the chat by the moderation team. So I think it's about time that we can wrap up. Do anything burn or distribute? Yep, that's what we're doing. We're doing a bit of both with the collective vote. Any plans for augmented reality? Makes more sense for a walking app. It would be really, really cool. Perhaps, in the future. I don't know if that's in our remit or not, but personally, I think it's a pretty cool idea. A new way to participate to the beta of Sweat Hero. We will have challenges, prize draws, and events to win access. Just keep your eyes open in the next few weeks. Is the whole Sweat team remote, or is there a head office somewhere? We have offices in Lisbon and London, where a lot of the team members are based, but people live all around the world. I live in Wales, which is a bit of a smaller country, part of the UK, but we're a very proud nation. It wouldn't make sense for me to travel to London or Lisbon, though. That's at least a 4-hour trip. So I work from home. Will the amount distributed depend on how much each has in their growth jars? So that's a very good question, and the short answer is yes. Michael, I saw you unmuted if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, I saw this question come up a few times. Yeah, absolutely. So the simple mathematics is the amount of sweat you have in all your 12-month growth jars divided by all the amount of sweat that everyone has in all their 12-month growth jars multiplied by the 59.5 million that's going to be distributed is exactly how much sweat you'll be getting. As an interesting stat, I think there were about 1.4 million users with some amount of sweat in a 12-month growth jar when voting kicked off. Maybe we can share the exact stats and for those who like numbers, in the coming days when we can pull all those numbers for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we'll do is have a blog post for everyone to sort of recap all of the details, and we'll include some numbers there for those guys. Did I hear as well 1.5 million users have 12-month growth jars? I don't know the exact number, but the majority of Sweat currently locked up in growth jars, which I think is around 510 million Sweat right now, is actually in 12-month growth jars.
It's now 1.5. I think it's closer to 1.15. That question there. Yeah, 1.15, not 1.5. You can actually, obviously, that's kind of trivial. It's more about how much sweat is held by those 1.15 million users. Because once we have that, everyone can sort of self-calculate the average. I think what I'm seeing is what a lot of people would like to know afterwards is what is the average number of sweat that was paid out for every single sweat coin held by a user. That could be an interesting an interesting way to look at it. So then it's easy to know for future. If you had 10 sweat, you're getting 5. If it was, 0.5 or whatever. And that sort of demystifies the calculation. So we can maybe share that after we've run the distribution. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll put it in announcements for everybody to see. I just got pinged in AMA questions. And the mystery question, how much sweat in 12-month jazz? I think it's around 470 million. I can actually pull up the number very quickly. And then we'll wrap up after this question, guys. Growth jazz. So there's currently 520 million sweat, 520,869,000 sweat in growth jazz total. And in 12-month only, there's 463,227,000 sweat. So a lot of sweat currently locked up in 12-month growth jazz. Someone done a very quick calculation in our Telegram and figured out that that's roughly 1 in every 9 sweat is in a growth jar of the current
Yeah.
circulating supply, which is awesome. Okay, yep, we're going to wrap it up here, guys. I think we'll have more AMAs following in the next few weeks. We'll talk to some of the product managers about trade, play, Sweat Hero, all of these things. So keep an eye on our announcements. We'll definitely have more people joining us. I want to say a very special thank you to Michael for joining us, as well as answering so many questions. It's been awesome having you here, and I can't wait to have you on the Discord again.
Thanks, David. I hope everyone votes when there's a vote again. It'll be cool to see that voting participation go up. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, guys. See you all soon.